I hope all of you are well. Sit up straight and tall. Make yourself quiet. Quiet enough that you can listen to the sound of your breath. Release these shoulder joints. Release these hip joints, legs. Release the senses and mind. Join your palms in front of your heart. And pay homage to this practice. And paying homage to that root teacher, Patanjali. Bow your head. Release your hands. Raise your head. Open your eyes. Now, let's see. Okay, so first things first, just let us lengthen the spine. Here you are sitting as, I might as well put this back, sitting as you are. Stretch your legs and change the cross, okay? So just remain sitting, stretch your legs and reverse that crossing, okay? And sit up tall and extend your arms as we've been discussing here. These arms release away from the spine and away from the skull so that spine stays long. And the neck muscles lengthen and widen out to these arms. The armpits extend, the ribs extend. Now you raise the arms. And as soon as you do the, I guess what you would call loading, instead of having the weight supported on the floor, you now carry all the weight of this arm. So carrying all that weight, extend every joint. Every joint. So fingers, wrists, elbow joints, shoulders into the neck. Okay, rest if you need to, but stay up if you can. Actually, rest. So we've been focused on the joints, making space in the joint. There's this paradox. If I want to open my shoulder joint, I spread this bone toward the elbow and right, and I lengthen this trunk down. That opens to shoulder, but lengthening toward the elbow closes the elbow. There has to be a corresponding spreading of the elbow joint. So in effect, there's these currents and counter currents. Okay, So how do you not have a collision? Rest for a second and I'll explain. From the middle of the bone, you lengthen toward the socket. That action of lengthening toward the socket puts the bone in, or should, if you do it right, put the bone in the center of the socket, at which point you can spread the joint evenly and create that expansion that moves away. So the inward action sets the bone correctly with its partner bone. That is the inward movement. The outward movement follows, and the outward movement is the important thing. The inward sets you up and stabilizes you so that outward expansion can be even and complete. Let's do it again. Fingers on the floor. Stretch the wrist outward toward the fingers, but use that anchor from the floor into the wrist to make your wrist, you don't want to just infinitely spread the wrist. It's not a physical separation at the wrist. It's just energetic. So physically, you've got to center the bones so that energetically expansion can happen. Forearm lengthens, upper arm lengthens. First, you center the joints, then expand. You maintain centering and expansion away from the center. Turn the palms up, raise the arms up. Keep that expansion. When the muscle feels tired, wake up the neighboring muscles. Raise the arms up more. The idea is to take the arms up toward Urdhva Hastasana, spreading the coherent, that means centered and stable joints. Can you keep the elbows straight, wrist straight, shoulders, ribs, and take the arms all the way up to parallel? Yes. And continue to spread. This is an energetic spread. And release, come out. Now, stretch your legs. Sit flat on the floor. We'll get to Adho Mukha Virasana, but we're going to do the same thing with the legs first before we fold them up. So lean back, sit in Dandasana and stretch your legs. Each joint, feet, that means your toes. It is very difficult to stretch the foot just on its own, but do your best. Open up those foot bones. There's many, many foot bones, ankle bones, your foot. It's a lot going on in there. Anchor and extend. From the middle of the shin, create anchoring in the joints so they feel safe. And then extend from the knee through the ankle, through the foot. Lengthen the middle thigh in both directions so you feel quiet, stable in the hip and knee. And then create space, extending that whole limb away from the root of the leg, pelvis, hip socket. Release the buttocks down. Lift the ribs up. So it's the same thing. The limb lengthens from, it spreads from its core to its periphery. Once the bone is happy in the socket, the energy can expand through all joints outward. Come out, rest. So now you could fold up the legs with whatever support is needed under the buttocks, under the feet. Keep each of the joints stable. And the problem with sitting folded up like this is the extension gets inhibited because there's just so much weight. So we draw the toes back to create length and the shins forward to make those joints lengthen. Then we start spreading thighs, as well as shins, as well as toes. And as you come forward, there is this similar action in the spine. Your pelvis from the hip socket is, the hip socket is able to spread, keep space, so it can rotate and come into the forward bend. And the buttocks can lengthen toward the buttock bones, as well as toward the chest, right? That pelvis can lengthen. And inside that pelvis, there's the sacroiliac joints, hip joints, and more subtly, the pubic symphysis, but the really mobile parts tend to be hip joints, sacroiliac joints, lumbar sacral joint. So make sure each of those joints is not just stable, it's pretty stable in this pose, but also make sure that there's a sense of spaciousness, breathability in sacroiliac joints, low back. Follow it up through each of your vertebrae, each of the ribs. So it's as if each vertebra lengthens away from each other vertebra toward each other vertebra. Very even. Now you come up to Adho Mukha Svanasana. Keep your feet about hip width and hand shoulder width. And before you come off the knees, make sure you've got the proper stretch through the arm, through the shoulder, through the neck and spine. So it's the upper body that takes the weight of the pose and the action of the pose first. Knees are still bent, but you stretch back, stable in the joints, but expansive. Go through the hips, all the way to the spine. Then you stretch your legs, and those leg bones lengthen toward each joint, stabilize those joints, and then expand evenly. So that shoulder is easy to collapse, make trouble with. Pay steady attention. Now, release, come out. Okay, so rest a bit. And let's see, so we can do 2 phases or without a break in between. Get a chair and put that chair, here's my strap, near a wall, oops, and put a sticky mat on the back of the chair. Watch for a second. My hips are actually a little bit taller than this chair seat. So not only am I gonna hang a sticky mat over the chair to raise it up, but I'm also gonna hang 2 blankets, and that brings this height up a little bit more to match my hips. I could even put a 3rd blanket, and don't forget, keep this near a wall. Otherwise, that much weight makes it tippy. So you want something that's kind of like the height of your hips. Also, this is very nicely padded. So watch. Line up those legs. Feet, I should say, very close together, touching, not apart. Stretch the leg in the way we've been discussing, with primary awareness of the joints. And fold forward, go to the chair seat and stretch your arms back up till the leg is vertical and the arm is vertical. Re-stretch the limbs, then take your hands to the wall and stretch. So this is like dog pose, but relationship to gravity is slightly different. Joint awareness. Extend. You go. Here's that pose. Take. Okay. Fold forward with great care, conscious of your joints. Then the hands go to the chair seat and organize your spine in this forward bend. Lengthen that pelvis. It's good, Vidya. Now take the arms up to the wall. Do not please flatten your palms on the wall. Instead, keep fingers on the wall. This gives you more room to stretch. So back those feet up just that ½ inch or so, okay? And then extend, make space in the joints. Watch what's happening in the neck. And don't forget, you actually have quite a few joints in the skull. It's not one bone. So make sure that there's some sense of mobility, even though technically, formally, they should all be fused. In yogic terms, consider that you want those surfaces to be mobile, energetically mobile. Now, walk toward the chair and come out. Here's what's next. Hopefully, if those shoulders stayed safe and didn't have any pains of, shrinkage or collapse, you will get back in that same pose. And let me say, where the head is, is up to you, but you know what my criteria is: make sure the joint spaces have some expansiveness. Okay, so you might drop the head, but do be cautious about the shoulders. Then mostly we raise the head to help protect this whole shoulder band. So be careful. Stand on the right leg, raise the left to horizontal. This outer thigh is the vulnerable joint. So you have to stabilize going toward it. Do you see I'm pointing toward it? And you have to expand it to take this pose, which is a supported Virabhadrasana 3. Okay. And come out. So this right hip socket is a focal point. Go forward, take your hands to the top chair seat. Organize yourself, arms up, shoulders safe. Fingertips at the wall, walk your feet slightly forward, Vidya. Good, stretch back, keep your hips level, Chaya, and Gay, toes down. Inner big toe extending, raise the, okay, one of you has the right leg, one left, I don't mind, but raise that lifted leg, horizontal, horizontal, extend, consciousness of the standing leg hip, the movement of the thigh bone anchoring into it, the movement of the pelvis anchoring in, and then stretch that hip away, opening the spine. Come out for a bit and stand up straight. So that thigh bone, are you okay in the hip? Are you understanding what I'm saying about this hip? How important it is that the first action keeps the joint properly together. If the joint is already sort of separated incorrectly, then the expansion is only going to aggravate. So there has to be that sense of correct placement. Now, think about this. Some of you might be able to do better. Watch what I do. Same standing on the right leg. Watch. I'm going to go up to Ardha Chandrasana. And in the act of going, this joint hopefully joins up in the right alignment from which I can expand. Do you see it? Now, from that expansion, I'm going to keep the coherence of the joint, keep that firmness in the socket as I come down. Don't worry about the arms, just worry about the hips. So you turn to Vira 3 without losing that Ardha Chandrasana firmness. Okay, I want you to bend from the hips, go to that chair seat, raise your left leg, lower the left elbow, and raise the right hip, all the while closing that right or standing leg hip socket. Make it firm. The buttock muscle rolls, tightens to the top outer thigh. And the top outer thigh of your standing leg tightens into the hip socket. So when you have that, now you stretch the whole joint. Then you take that top hand down to the floor. Keep the left hip in place, the bones in place. The joint expanded, but in place. As you roll down to Vira 3, raise that leg. Now expand again. The lifted leg, the standing leg, the spine. And then exhale, lower the foot. I hope that 3-part pose went well. Do the other side. Okay, side 2, complete. You take the forward bend, Uttanasana, Ardha Uttanasana, and then you stand on the left leg. So, is that true? Yes, second leg. Second side elbow, you come down. It should, okay, if your side 2 is the right leg, that's your side. Again, Pratima Vidya, beg pardon, your left foot should come forward. Vertical. Yes, vertical left elbow, vertical left leg. Roll, more Chaya into Ardha Chandrasana, outer thigh to the hip. Vidya, you should stand on the left leg and raise the right leg. Stand on the left leg, take the left elbow to the chair seat and tighten the left hip as you roll away from the camera. Then the rest of you are already coming on down. Now be aware of the sacroiliac as well as those hip sockets and the expansion as you come down now. Keep the hip socket square, but expand evenly. Raise that leg and down you come. And there's a little repetition that is great. Okay, so do you get the idea that even that joint compactness and expansion can happen in a place where the joint is already compact? Expansion can happen, and in a place where the joint surface is very expanded, compaction can happen. There is an evenness. There is both. There's both. Okay, so so let's take a different pose. Remove most of these blankets, just leave the sticky mat and the chair near the wall. You might use a strap, but if you've got another wall or filling a wall, a chair that you can use for balance, use that. But I'll show without because it gets in the way. So we're going to start with a pose we're familiar with already, where those bones have to connect to the socket before the expansion occurs. Okay, then the arms will come up Same thing will happen in the spine and shoulders and upper body. Then there will be a rotation. So the tendency in a rotation is for the hip you're turning toward to sort of accept and exaggerate. Instead, you want to keep that sense of the compaction before the expansion, and you will take parivrita, Uttita Hasta Padangushtasana. And if you can, this arm will stretch out from the spine. So you get very expansive in the chest. Okay. Parivrita, Uttita Hasta Padangushtasana. Take support for your balance. Make sure your standing foot points straight toward the wall and you face straight forward. Then the right foot comes up. Toes to the wall, touch the wall. The heel should be comfortably supported on that chair. Don't block the Achilles. Face that standing foot straight forward. Move those bones into the sockets and stretch the legs. So first comes the anchoring, then comes this expansion. Take the arms up overhead, Urdhva Hastasana. And as much as those legs open the ribs, the spine, the breath, and arms, shoulders, armpits. Relax the breath. Take the arms down and begin the rotation. Left hand to the outer right shin if possible. Now, if immediately stretching that right arm way back irritates the shoulder, don't do it. Take it down, bend the elbow and expand in a way that is more tolerable. You must be able to stabilize the joints and expand them. So I can't hear you, Gay, if you're telling me things. Lift your chest, turn those ribs. You've got to be able to spread the ribs. What's up, Gay?
For some reason, I'm having trouble with both legs here, getting cramps. Both sides. I don't know why.
Cool. And it won't stop. Come out the rest of you, please.
I already had it in the pose before.
So there's got to be a balance between the anchoring in and the extension. And there has to be a complete limb extension. So put your mind on your feet, stretch through the knee, through the hip, up into the waist. Is that helping the cramp, Gay?
Yes, yes.
Work that way. Skip the joints in question.
It's right there.
Side two, skip it. Go to your foot. Go to your pelvis. So it's not skipping it entirely, but you can see how that area is a focal place and you want your mind to spread. Have you changed sides, Gay?
No, I will.
Please. Each joint, but when there's a joint with an issue, it often helps to skip it and work the joints on either side. And expand. think with your toes, Gay. Not pushing the wall, but contacting and spreading.
That's better.
Okay. Blending. Now, Vidya, you must raise that back arm, or really stretch it away from the neck before it comes up to horizontal. So don't irritate those joints. Open that chest. Don't look down. Don't look down. Shoulders away from the spine, away from the skull. Come out carefully. Okay. Your hips okay?
Yes.
All right. Now, here is a very strange thing. Watch. Let's see. I'm going to pull props out of the way. So you need a sticky mat underneath you, and it's possible you'll need a rolled up blanket or a bolster, but watch first. In an ideal world, you won't. Now I'm going to put myself on a little diagonal so you can see everything, but in theory, you'll be running parallel to your sticky mat, face down, and your knee will come out perpendicular to your spine, not low down and not high up, perpendicular, 90-degree angle. So I'm going to go a little sideways so you see. In theory, you're facing flat, but I'm turning it around so I can point. And these ribs are down. In theory, this hip is relaxed. Now, in practice, many of us have a tight hip and it'll be up like this. It'll poke up. You do what you do. Don't force. Okay, so you are where you are. Now watch my foot. The heel comes up, the toes go down. This foot can be either way. What you have to do now is push your toes on the floor. Keep your pelvis as level as possible and raise the knee. Then you take a break and you raise it again and you take a break. You do it 3 times. Watch. The third time, your foot stays flat instead of pointing toes down. Third time, everything stays as original, and all you do is pick up that knee. If that's impossible, show me. Lie face down. Comfortably. Take your right knee to the side. Perpendicular, not above. Lay your foot flat on the floor, thigh reaching out. Don't exert force, just see what you got. Knee to thigh, 90 degrees, thigh to spine, 90 degrees. Now, turn your toes to the floor, heel up. So you can push a bit. Toe prints on the floor. And face the floor with your ribs, navel, abdomen. And raise the right knee. Be as isolationist as you can. Only lift the thigh. Try to avoid lifting any part of anything else. Okay, so it's pretty ridiculous, but go after it. Even if you get most of the weight of the leg off the floor, but doesn't completely rise up, that's cool. Avoid hopping, do something that is sustainable even for a second, right? So it's not a abrupt action, okay? And you rest, and if this was going decently, then put your foot flat on the floor and see about lifting without that leverage, without that particular leverage. It is, for most of us, more difficult. Heel touching the floor in that final one. Gay, bend your knee more, just a little, not hip, just knee. Bring your foot closer to you. Yes. All right. Change sides. You do not have to face me. You don't have to turn over anything. Change sides. Flip on the back. Just change sides. Keep room by your feet, Gay. Get away from the wall. Face down as prone as you can be comfortably. See how those joints feel. Then take the left toes down, heel up, so you can use that leverage. Relax the abdomen. See if you can keep breathing the whole time. You raise the left knee. So don't do it by holding your breath. Got the cramps again, Gay? It's a sign. Try it again. The cramp is a sign that the compaction of the joint is winning. So from the lumbar spine through the buttocks, the hip, and out to the knee, you extend. Skip the hip. Raise the knee, not even thinking of the hip. And your final one is, if possible, the foot flat with the heel down. At least the effort in that direction. And release, come out.
It was easier with the heel down. I must have been doing it wrong.
Nope, just a different piece of the hip joint connectivity. Okay. So let's see if we can use that strength. In theory, you don't need the strap. You just need your joint action. But when the flexibility is not great, you need a strap so that you can increase that spaciousness in the joints. You have support for it. Now, the thing that happens to most people when they're trying to do this without support, like Urdhva Prasarita Padasana or one-legged, is they get a cramp up close to the hip. You have to think with the middle of the bone spreading toward the sockets. From the middle of the bone, you spread. And that will take some of the crampiness out of the hip. Once again, it's like skipping. And then from the ribs to the buttocks to the foot, you stretch. You take your arms out to the side with the same expansiveness, and you spread your bones toward the joints, and you expand the joints. Now, this outer thigh has done several things to keep its strength. Use a strap as much as necessary. Straighten that leg. You use the strap to connect joint to joint. Stretch the left leg. Stretch the left arm. When the right leg goes to the right, keep the lengthening of the bones from the middle of the bone toward the joints, and from the center of the joint outward. All joints, both hips, both shoulders. So you go off to the side, Gay, off to the right. And inhale, come back up. Oh, watch that connectivity. What happened in the left hip and right hip? If y'all got to bend that left leg to come up, there's probably some trouble in the joints too. Change sides. Now, start with 2 straight legs. Hey, go through a middle pose on the floor. Beg pardon. 2 legs on the floor. Yes. Lower those feet to the floor. Not like, we're gonna get there. Just take your feet down. Take your feet down to the floor. Lay on the floor and stretch your legs straight. Then bend up the left leg, put the strap around it, stretch the leg vertical, keep your right leg aware of its joints. Right leg straightens or never does bend. Left leg straightens. Now connect from the middle of the bones to the joints, and then expand those joints. Skip that crampy hip. Now the leg goes to the side, keeping that outer thigh lengthening toward its hip so that that leg can simultaneously expand outward from the hip. Stretch the right leg, stretch the right hip. All vertebra. Straighten that leg. This is the joints at work. Now, keeping the joints expanded, inhale, come up, raise the leg, straight leg, and release, come out, bend the knee, unhook the strap, come out. Okay, so here it goes. Take your arms overhead. Watch, lying on your back, you take your arms overhead. So from the hips to the fingertips, you're doing Urdhva Hastasana. Keep your skull soft. Then the knees come up. And in theory, this back pelvis stays flat, level on the floor. If it does not, as you proceed, you elevate your hips on a blanket. I'll show. It's not going to appear here it's going to appear when you straighten your legs to vertical. If the hamstring or the hip is tight, it'll feel like it pulls your lower buttocks off the floor. So if that's happening, you need to elevate the lumbar spine and hips, the low back and hips. Then the legs will stretch up more easily. In this position, you'll begin lowering the legs, always from the extension of the joints. So every joint, you can't let the lumbar joints collapse as you take this pose. So some of you, especially those with difficulty fully straightening those knees, if it caused, look, bend your knees for a second. Everybody, bend your knees, draw them up, bend them all the way, fold up like Adho Mukha Virasana. And with the arm, did you get more on that blanket? Yes, there, low back, right up to the floating ribs. Now knees off the floor and stretch your arms overhead. Urdhva feet off the floor. Feet off the, draw your knees up. Now your spine is a certain length. Make sure it's as long as can be. Park your fingernails on the floor. And when you stretch your legs up, don't let your fingernails shrink towards your hips. Stretch your legs. Do not shrink. Expand. Stretch your legs. Open those knees. The thigh bone has to lengthen toward the hip socket and toward the knee. Now exhaling, keeping that back safe, right? No collapse of the joints. Begin lowering the legs. When you lose the space in the joints, bend your knees, put your feet on the floor. Stretch those legs. Do not bend the knee. If you wonder if I'm talking to you in particular, I am. You come up with that expansiveness, you descend, legs together, at least the big toes together. Don't move your fingernails. This is the work of continuous expansion. Nobody should exceed capacity. If there is an injury in the low back, you lower until you cannot maintain space, and you bend the knees and bring the feet to the floor. So you take that pressure off. Okay, so one more effort and you're done. As you extend from the floating ribs through the waist, through the hips to the feet. Those hips seem like such a central pivot place. Treat that as a throughway, not a collection point. Stretch from the ribs to the feet. Then, when you're done, release, come out. Okay. So, I hope you get this point, that sense of directionality in both directions, toward the joint, away from the joint. The usefulness of those directions. Yes, maybe. All right. So It's all been about the hips. Now you need to get a blanket for under your shoulders and a brick or two just to make a side-by-side pillar to support your hips. We're going to do active work first without bricks, possibly with this strap to help catch the ankles. You need a blanket that's as wide as your shoulders. So when you bring your shoulders down, they're distinctly on. The elbows don't matter quite as much. Your bricks should be in reach of this position. Now, the other end of the blanket can't go under your bricks. So if you see I've got some space here, I hope you have some also. So with your straps or your hands holding your ankles, stretch these arms and they stretch. My hips are up just slightly, so it's easier for me to feel that stretch of the arm away from the skull. Even as this arm bone tucks in to its socket, don't forget, there's got to be a seating of the bone in the socket. Now it's seated, I expand. Okay. And you reach through the arms and reach through the legs and come up and stay up first actively through the action of the arms, action of the legs. So the hips come up a bit and you get the elbow straightened and then you roll, tucking those arm bones into the socket and the socket in close. From that, lengthen away from the neck toward the fingers, stretch away, expand the chest toward those shoulders, armpits, collarbones, lengthen the legs. So there's a direction where that leg lengthens toward the hip socket, seating that thigh bone. Likewise, the buttock goes toward the socket, seating the pelvis correctly. And from there, the joint lifts and expands. Place the bricks underneath your hips, coming up on your tippy toes, as you may need to. 2 bricks is just a bigger, wider support, touching those sacroiliac joints that we spoke of. Tuck those shoulders. Yep. Now, if the legs will straighten, they should straighten with these rules in mind, of course. The seating of the bone in the socket is what we usually call alignment. And from that alignment, expansion occurs. All joints. Hello, Pooch. Dogs are often happy about yoga. Maybe they just know that the end of class is soon. animals tend to show up toward the end of class.
Partner knows.
Now, if that pelvis is stable on those two bricks, you can bend your knees, take your feet off the floor, and do something that looks like Viparita Karani. Yes, balancing those legs. Now, there's not a requirement, anybody, that you straighten the legs, but just balancing those bent legs lifted on the bricks, right? If straightening the legs causes your breath to tighten, your abdomen to harden, your spine to change shape, or your hips to cramp, then leave your knees bent. If there's enough flexibility to really keep that chest lifted and the arms stretching like shoulder stand, then you do. You get another minute of this in some form. Again, don't collapse those joints. You have to be able to extend, expand. When the joints expand properly, the breath becomes normal, soft, relaxed. When the joints, one or more, cannot expand, the breath cannot be quiet. So if you're not clear about the, the completeness of your actions and sensations, look to this breath. Please come out. First, the feet go to the floor and you return to this Setu Bandha-like shape. Then remove the bricks, but keep the hips lifted so you get that activity again. Watch your sacroiliac joints. And then slowly lower the hips. And rest there for a little bit. We're not quite done, so don't get totally comfy. So roll to your side, come up and have a look. You've done this pose before, so it's not a strange pose to you, but the emphasis is just today's emphasis. So I'm putting this blanket down so that the back of my hips don't feel bony on the sticky mat. So watch. Here's a strap, can come in handy. Mostly what I need here is the back of my pelvis on a blanket. The rest doesn't matter so much. So I've put this strap around my feet and I hold it with the left hand, knees bent, left hand holding the strap, right arm expanded. So you will notice or suspect this is Jatara Parivartanasana, and it is. So you need to keep this thigh bone, both of them, long, seated in the socket, but also extending from the pelvis out to that knee. Likewise, the pelvis is releasing into the chest and trunk. And you expand. So this is a rotational expansion. And this strap now I'm changing sides, is a suspender underneath the knee, so it gives support. So you can explore these joints. I want to emphasize the importance of keeping this knee tucked. If you see it, it's not coming away from me as the knee comes down. I'm pulling it to keep it up. Okay, so you do that too. Jatara Parivartanasana. The same side hand holds the strap on the side you're going toward. And you stretch the opposite shoulder away. Bend your knees, knees together, feet together, and the strap is on your left side. Your legs go left first, so your trunk goes right first. Now, left elbow out to the side, fold those knees up, fold your feet to your buttocks. Fold your knees, bend your knees. Now you go to the side. The waist and pelvis go, so those hips stay even with each other. Give support. I have to show again. Please come up. We don't have too much time, but I want to show it clearly one more time. So watch how I give this support, and you'll see from the side. So I take this whole strap up here, and my elbow bends out to the side. I'm pulling, arm up, elbow up, hand is pulling. See how I catch? I can pull toward my thumb. It's a good grip. Now, when I go off to the side, I'm pulling so my knees stay toward my armpits as I go into the pose. And as you see it, I'm keeping attention, so it creates a sling out of this strap. Does it rest on my arm? It rests on the sling, or if it goes to the floor, yay. Okay, elbow out, thumb pulling. It's a strong grip. It's enough to support your leg. Use a big loop on the strap and hold both sides of it with your thumb pointing toward your head. Change your grip, Chaya. Knees together. Strap on the outside of the knees. Go to your left this time if you are not. Keep the left hand pulling. The legs suspended in the strap. Fold the knees. Bring your heels toward your buttocks. It's a compact pose. Lengthen the spine. Inhaling, come up, change sides. Off you go. So the waist turns, the spine lengthens to keep those knees together by moving that whole waist, pelvis, hip to keep the legs together. Lift your spine, expand the chest. Now, inhale, come up. Back to the center. Use that strap to help lift. Then release the legs. First, the knees are bent, so that spine is at rest on the floor, knees up, feet down. And then stretch the legs and be in Shavasana. Last few minutes. Take the support that makes your spine happy. So the arrangement of the body in Shavasana is similar to everything else we've done. Make sure those joints are coherent. That meaning of that term is they connect to each other correctly. And in that context, expand. Think of yourself like the yogis do, which is to say, think of yourself as a little cosmos, microcosmos. And just like the universe, the cosmos, expand evenly. Soften the cells, not just the joints. Start with the joints. Now it is formally the end of class. You bring yourselves back at your speed. Be careful. One thing at a time. Namaskar.